Welcome to this podcast on technology, education, and India. My name is Sahil Aggarwal. I'm the co-founder and chief executive officer of Rishihood University. It's an absolute honor to host Shri Anil Swaroop ji, a celebrated bureaucrat, IS officer who had leading charge of education in India as the education secretary, coal secretary. He's also the author of 3 books, Ethical Dilemmas of a Civil Servant, Not Just a Civil Servant, and No More a Civil Servant. Almost sounds like a trilogy. He's also the founder chairman of an organization called Nexus for Good. Sir, thank you so much for accepting our request and being here with us on this podcast.
It's a pleasure to be here, yes.
Since you have looked at education from the topmost level, I want to start by asking you what role you think can technology play in improving the quality of education in India?
My personal view is that technology can not only improve the education in India, it can transform governance itself.
Okay.
Technology can be a game changer. It is a game changer in certain contexts, but more of it can be used. As a civil servant, I did use technology quite a lot throughout my career and benefited enormously. And that's when I understood the application of technology. I'm not a technologist. I don't understand technology much of it, but I know how to use technology, and that helped me a lot. So technology can be a game changer, whether it's field of education or even otherwise.
Right. I totally agree with you. And Rishihood University is actually, we say we are an impact university. So impact in different domains, including governance, is like a core passion for us. So when we say impact, we have to create leaders to create that impact, and leaders in every domain, including tech leaders. So coming to tech education, this program that Rishihood University and Newton School of Technology have designed in partnership, it is a very interesting blend of academic theory as well as industry practice. So along with the faculty members from top universities in the world, we've also invited practitioners from top industry to co-teach with those faculty members and give the students the skills that are actually relevant and needed in the industry. So we want to ask from you that what are your thoughts on this model of academia and industry integration, and what can we do to serve the needs of a country like India?
I'm so glad you're doing what you're doing. One of my problems that I foresaw while working in the government and even otherwise is that the disconnect that existed between theory and practice.
Mm-hmm.
So whether we take technology as theoretical knowledge and its actual application. And I saw it that a lot of it that is being taught in the university from a purely practical point of view that was not so relevant.
Mm-hmm.
So the two had to come together, the practitioners and the academy.
Mm-hmm.
They had to come together, and I'm glad you're bringing it. I used to push it a lot, that whether it's government or people involved in education have to engage intensively with the practice. Because simply technology is evolving very fast.
Right.
So whereas understanding of technology is very, very important as to which direction it is going, but more important is the application of that technology.
Mm-hmm.
So everyone talks about technology.
Yeah.
It's a fashion to talk about technology, especially to an ignorant person like me. People talk about technology, it's Greek to me. But once it is applied, then it makes sense to a common man, and it becomes much more relevant.
Mm-hmm.
So it's important that education in India in general and technology in particular relates itself to the actual requirements on the ground. Hence, there is a necessity to understand the ground reality, the disconnect that may exist between what is happening on the ground and what is being thought about, whether in the domain of technology or policy.
Right.
If there is a disconnect, then both will stand to lose.
Mm-hmm.
If there is a connect between the two and practitioners also participate in this dialogue, then I think both will benefit. It's a win-win for both.
Correct. You have been a policymaker, you've headed education for India. So what kind of things that you feel government did, and what are the things that we can learn from in your past experience of last 5-10 years? There's some steps that...
government has been encouraging technology quite a lot.
Mm-hmm.
The national education policy talks about technology so much. More than that, I think the Prime Minister himself is very committed to technology. He talks about it, he knows about it, he believes in practicing that technology. So the government's commitment is there. But just commitment won't help. Actually, it has to move on the ground. And that's where, again, this partnership between the policymakers, that's the government, and the implementers, that could be the private as well as the public, have to come together. Yeah. I've often said, in a slightly different context applicable to technology also, that usually the public curses the private and the private people curse the government across the board, which I think is wrong. There are good people in the public domain, there are good people in the private domain. The two have to come together. And hence I've often emphasized the importance of public-private partnership. It applies to technology as well. So most of the practitioners of technology exist in the private domain. But whether the facilitating environment that gets created by the government is the role of the government. So government has to primarily play the role of a facilitator. Now, in order to create that environment, it is necessary to engage intensively with those that are engaged in technology, because they give you the context. They tell you where the shoe pinches. They tell you what the problems are. The job of the government is not to create or add to those problems or create new ones, but to enable and sit together and find solutions to those problems. So whether it is enabling legislative environment, we talk of so many aspects in this, whether it's cyber security or otherwise, import of hardware, whether we enabling that, these are issues that the government has to engage with the private domain. So as the technology evolves, probably the hardware requirement may change. What are the import policies? And I'm digressing a bit, but it is a complex whole. And I don't think either the private sector or the government alone can sort this out. They have to sit together in partnership and see how government becomes a facilitator, which benefits the country, which benefits the entrepreneurs, which benefit the people of the country, which benefits the government. So as a part of the government, I used to say that if businesses grow, then apart from anybody else, the government also benefits. The revenue grows.
Yeah, absolutely.
Employment grows. These are the objectives that any government has. And that's again where technology can play an important role.
So how do we take it to India is a young country, the demography is such, and if we have to enable them to participate in this kind of a change, particularly this school to college, transition, we see a very different kind of a tech environment in colleges, compared to schools. And you have been the school education secretary also. What kind of things you feel should be taken so that this transition is smoother and the youth of India can really be taken to their full potential?
So the critical point is what you are teaching the child. Where is he going? What is his objective? What is the vocation that he's trying to adopt? Like, for example, a large number of students blindly do something without realizing where it is going to pay. And that's a tragedy, because you have so many children going in for humanities, doing history and geography. Not that these are wonderful subjects, they should be studied. But if they don't get anywhere, they start doing their bachelor's and master's. Why should they go there? And that is something good about the new education policy, where they talk about the focus on vocational education. Don't push every child to study something which everyone else is studying, and take them to an area where he becomes employable. So the problem today in this country, as I see, is the employability of the child who's getting educated. Is he employable? And this applies also to people who are doing technology. There's so many engineering colleges, there's so many medical colleges where they get taught, if you can call them any teaching, and they are not employable. So the quality part assumes a great importance. And that's where, again, government intervention becomes very, very important, along with the private domain, to see that whatever is being taught to the child, he becomes employable, and employability will come if there is quality in the education.
Let's take this one step further. We've seen people becoming Sundar Pichai and Satya Nadella, but we've not seen Indians becoming Jeff Bezos and Mark Zuckerberg. What does it take? How do we make Indians leaders and entrepreneurs?
No, I am not too enamored in making them Satya Nadella or anybody else. They should become good entrepreneurs. They need not reach the levels these guys have. The next question is, what is the input that I'm providing to that child to become a successful entrepreneur? These are exceptions that you're talking of, and there will continue to be such exceptions in society. But I don't think they can become an aspiration of an individual, but not many are going to become Satya Nadellas. So I'm not too hassled about it. My contention is, if majority of those that study occupy a position in society as successful entrepreneur, not necessarily Satya Nadella. So am I providing that input to them? And that's what, when you mentioned in the beginning, that what the university is trying to, your university is trying to do, is a move in that direction. You may not be able to create Satya Nadellas, but you'll be able to create successful entrepreneurs who will be proud of what they're doing. And that is what that matters. So my concern is more in terms of what and the nature of the education that is being provided to the child, whether it relates to the demand or whether it's only supply pushed. So you have something, you teach a guy something. No, I think it's the private sector that has a better feel of the market. They can determine which direction a child should go. And that's where they should sit with the government and provide such skills to an individual that he becomes successful entrepreneur. Some of them will become such an individual.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. I totally agree. So, one may become a very good employee, or one may become a great entrepreneur. You're talking about people not choosing careers very wisely. So, what can we do, especially as a university or even as a society?
I think both as a university and as a society, a lot of counseling needs to be done. And for counseling, you have to understand the child.
Right.
There can't be general prescription that everyone should go here. Like today, the fashion is so many. Everyone wants to join the IIT.
Yeah.
They don't really know what they're going to do after that. But they think that by joining the IIT, which may be very fair understanding, but not everyone can get into. How many percentage of people get to IITs?
Yeah.
And hence, it's important to understand the child. It is only after having understood the child that you'll be able to counsel. We don't lay so much emphasis on counseling. It's very, very important, because all the disappointments that the child faces in terms of his inability to understand himself, where he wants to go, and that's where the counselor, who is a specialist, will be able to guide him that this is your aptitude. Aptitude doesn't change in 1 year, 2 years. You have a fundamental aptitude, and the parents will put pressure on him to become a doctor, an engineer, an IAS officer.
Yeah.
He has a different aptitude altogether.
Yeah.
So counselor can not only counsel the child, the counselor can counsel the parents as well. The ultimate bottom line of whatever we are doing is a sense of satisfaction and happiness. If I'm pushed to an area where my parents feel that this is the best for you, which he thinks that is not good for him, and there's a disconnect between what he has in mind and what he's told to do, then he'll be a miserable person. So it's not necessary for everyone to become an engineer or an IAS officer. It's a question of understanding that individual, determining which path would be the best for him, and then trying to convince him into believing in what he is good. Sometimes, because of the external pressures of the society, he starts believing that this is the path best for him. But if you explore it further, you talk to him, you can actually convince him into believing what he should be doing himself.
I can totally resonate with it. So I went to IIT Delhi, and till the time we went there, we were only told and motivated to go there. What happens after that was
Many of us
never told.
Many of us don't know where we are getting into, but we go there because that's the fashion.
Yeah, we mentioned parents, so and that I think that's the tricky part. So what do parents need to know? So one is counseling, but how can we really make them part of this whole? Because parents help and they want the best out of their children. And
so people used to ask me when I was school education secretary, which is the biggest problem in school education. And I used to look around here and there and softly say the parents, at least in the urban areas, parents put such enormous pressure on their children to become what they think is right. That, I've seen children break down.
Yeah.
And it's very unfortunate. So how do you go about addressing it? I think many schools have started that. They've started a dialogue with the parents. I may not be using the word counseling because there are not so many professional counselors, but at least a dialogue happens. And through dialogue, you get the parents out, you're able to, make them think differently. Right now, they're thinking on only one line, what is the socially what is required, they pressurize the child. But through a dialogue, you start a conversation wherein you try and tell them that this may not be good for the child to put so much pressure on him. Let me go a step backward. Look at the pressure that the parents put on marks, Marks have become the primary determinant of child, The child is determined by the number of marks that you
made into a metric.
Which is most unfortunate.
Yeah.
Most unfortunate. And I don't want to go into the details of how marks are given and how it happens. But the fact of the matter is marks, without looking at the overall persona of the child, how much it matters subsequently is not so much marks that he gets in class 10 and 12, but as an overall person because ultimate success in life is not marks, is the overall personality of the child. Unfortunately, some of the parents don't understand that, but it can be done by demonstrating and illustrating and putting forth such children who may not have done very well in the academics, but have succeeded in life, thereby putting them or presenting them as role models of people who did not do so well in academics, but how did they do well in life? And what exactly did they do? What path did they follow? We don't sufficiently discuss that. If you do that, then probably we'll be able to convince the parents to believing that academics alone is not going to take him much further. It has to be overall development of that personality.
Great. So as a policymaker, as a thought leader, what would be your expectations from a future graduate and perhaps their parents?
I do not have much expectation. I think I have more expectations from the people who are engaging with them.
Okay.
They are in a particular situation. They are put in a slot. And poor chap, he can't do much. He goes into that slot and tries to do his best. I think the environment has to be developed. University like yours and other universities should create an environment where the best of the child comes out. And best need not necessarily be 100 out of 100 in English literature.
Yeah.
As I've seen some people get in this BSc. It's not that. It's a question of he having a sense of fulfillment. Whether he feels fulfilled in a particular context. So it's important for those that are engaged in teaching the child or in interacting with the child to look at the child as a unique person. Unfortunately or fortunately, every child is unique. Now, when we ask one child to compete with other, it's very unfair on both of them. And this competition is actually destroying his psyche. We should make him believe that you are unique in your own way. You have to compete with yourselves and learn from others. Unfortunately, we are competing with each other and hence we are not learning from each other. So there's a lot of jealousy. We are not cooperating with each other because we are evolving as individuals. The difference that I see in education here and elsewhere in the world is that they evolve as groups. They partner with each other. Here, we are evolving as individuals. And that is what competition is doing to them. That they are getting isolated. They're trying to do their best, not as a part of a group, but as an individual. Now, this cannot be taken care of by the individual himself. It's the environment, the organization, the institution where he's engaged in, and of course the parents have to themselves be convinced that he need not come first in the class. I keep giving my own example. I used to get very upset the years I didn't get first position, first rank in the class. Now today, no one talks about my ranks in class 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. It becomes absolutely irrelevant. And at that point in time, one was so concerned, one used to get so upset. It's all nonsense actually. If you look at it from an overall context, I hope somebody does a research on that the impact of academic results in his ultimate success in life, someone does it, probably he will be able to illustrate and demonstrate that academic success is important. I'm not trying to belittle its importance, but that's not the be all and the end all of human existence. It's much more beyond that.
This totally makes sense. So we were wondering, doing a discussion at within our faculty, that since all the evaluation once we graduate from a university happens based on our output, not based on the exams, and those outputs are created in teams. So why are evaluations in schools and colleges done as individuals?
Absolutely.
So we in fact changed some of our evaluations into team projects.
Wonderful.
So that we can collaborate and learn the art of collaboration and creating an outcome rather than over competing somewhere else. I can totally relate. And in fact, these things that you triple impact formula, first is professional impact, how well we can be in our profession. Second is public impact. So how well can we use our profession to support the public and the society. And third is personal impact. How fulfilled and joyous can we feel as individuals. And I think you covered it very well, and I totally relate with that. Last part of our podcast today, I want you to share a brief, one-line responses on some of the roles that people play in education, or education can play in them. So we call this the roll call, not the roll call that happens in the school, but the role of something for education. So what's the role of peers in education?
Support, help. That's the role of peers.
The role of teachers in education?
Enable. Enable the child to learn. Don't teach it, enable them to learn.
The role of parents?
Parents, they are the biggest facilitators for the child. They should play a role of a facilitator. Don't push the child. If you push the child, he becomes... Each child is very distinct, as I said earlier. So understand your child very well and don't push him beyond a particular limit, because nobody else except the parents understands the child the best. An outsider will never understand. So if the parents who understand the child don't attempt to understand him, there's trouble.
The role of technology in education.
Technology can be a game changer. But technology cannot replace human beings, should not replace human beings. It can be a fantastic transformer, but it has to be used by human beings. There has to be a human touch to technology.
And finally, the role of industry in education.
Industry should continue to engage with education so that education does not get disconnected with industry. That engagement with education and education institutions is extremely important. Otherwise, people will get educated and they will never get employment. So that engagement is very important.
Excellent. Fabulous. Thank you so much. So Rishihood and Newton have this industry academia partnership, which is a unique and pioneer program for all the computer science aspirants, tech enthusiasts in India. And our objective is to create and mold future tech leaders and tech entrepreneurs in India. So if you are a class 12 graduate looking to become a tech leader of tomorrow, you can apply to our programs. The applications are open, and at the link below, you will find the application link. Thanks a lot. Thank you, Anil sir, for giving us your time. It was great having this interaction with you.
Pleasure was mine. Thank you.